Have you found a job? Lynch, who had just turned around and returned home, looked at his girlfriend who was cooking, and shook his head guiltily. Girlfriend is neither disappointed nor excessively emotional, as if it is normal to not find a job. Lynch tried his best to avoid verbal communication. He was afraid that the woman who slept next to him every day would see her abnormality. My girlfriend walked to the shaky wooden table with a deformed frying pan, put a fried egg on a plate of minced meat, and sat down. Don't think so much, I still have some money here, maybe you can find a job tomorrow, eat first. Lynch nodded, and began to enjoy the not-so-savory dinner. The fork pierces the slightly solidified outer layer of the egg, and the yolk thickly flows on the minced meat, like a natural seasoning or a certain sauce, making these meat more attractive. He was eating mechanically, but he was thinking about other things in his mind. He crossed, he doesn't know what scientific principle this is, or other reasons, but in short, he crossed. Before crossing, he did a lot of work: courier, insurance salesman, running hall, half-cooking cook. He has done a lot of small jobs in the past 30 years, and after 30 years of age, great changes have taken place. According to what he later said, he used the previous 30 years to accumulate experience, and then accumulatively accumulate, and his voiceful speech successfully impressed the judge. Then he slept in that small room for the first time, and planned to publish an autobiography to recall his legendary life in the future. After gradually falling into a sleepy dream, he passed through. Appeared in this home as soon as he traversed. The owner of this body happened to be called Lynch, but this was already another world that had nothing to do with the previous life. He has nothing but a girlfriend. Now he is like the most failed kind of social scum. He eats his girlfriend and lives with his girlfriend. In addition to helping his girlfriend solve some problems at night, he is like a parasite. In the past few days, he has been going out and looking for a job as an excuse to travel around outside. This world gives him an unspeakable sense of novelty. It is like the feeling of the 1940s and 50s, or the 1950s and 1960s, that technology is not very developed, but at the same time it is in the explosive period of technology. A lot of products appeared in front of the people constantly, which made people dizzying. He saw the slogan on the propaganda poster on the street: Arita, a trace of ennui in his opinion, this world, this society, the ground is full of money, and he just needs to bend over to pick it up. His blood is boiling slightly, and his heart is becoming stronger and stronger. There is a desire deep in his heart. He firmly believes that there is a reason for his crossing. Perhaps, something brought me here just to let me leave my legend here. Go and put in the hot water, let's take a bath today, the girlfriend ordered while packing the dishes. Lynch nodded and stood up. He walked towards the bathroom not far away. As he walked, he asked casually, "We just washed yesterday?" During the time he passed through, he found that he and his girlfriend had a very clear life plan, which was not completely messy. The weather is neither hot nor cold. If you don't exercise vigorously, you don't sweat easily, so you basically don't need to take a shower every day. It's not that people don't want to clean their bodies every day, but because they have to pay for changing clothes and hot water. Rich people don't care about these small money, they even install a boiler in their house to provide a heating system, and buy a washing machine to wash clothes anytime, anywhere. But for the poor, these are unnecessary and unaffordable expenses, so their lives must become regular. Carefully calculate every expenditure, and adhere to the regular life like a monk to save every penny. This is their life. It's not that they want regularity, it's more because of poverty. My girlfriend turned around and walked to the edge of the pool, unscrewing the valve to wash the tableware. After 12 o'clock in the evening, our hot water will stop, and we will pay the bill next week. This can save some. Lynch shrugged. He walked into the bathroom, unscrewed the valve, and let off the cold water at the front, and then the steamed hot water flowed out of the pipe. After taking a shower, the two lay on a small bed, and soon fell asleep. Lynch's girlfriend works in a supermarket, and a cashier works 10 hours a day, including 1 hour break. She often picks up some impending or expired food, or cheap daily necessities from the supermarket. This is why the two of them only work and can survive. Both of them were high school classmates, and neither of them were able to enter the university. Lynch worked as a worker for a period of time, but later gave up because of the exhaustion of work. Catherine, her girlfriend, got the job in the supermarket and has maintained it. This is a very typical family of losers. Whether it's Lynch or Catherine, they don't know how long this kind of life can last. Maybe they can make it to the day when they enter the marriage hall, and then continue to barely maintain it for a lifetime. But it is also possible to end this fragile relationship anytime and anywhere because of the sudden eruption of certain emotions. Early the next morning, Lynch simply freshened up. Catherine had left, leaving a box of wheat circles and a bottle of milk on the table. He walked to the side of the cupboard and poured the milk into the pot to heat it, and took a look at the expiration date. It was not surprising that it had expired for 2 days. This kind of milk is directly processed in the supermarket and thrown into the trash can. However, many supermarket employees are willing to endure the long working hours and low salary but also work in the supermarket. What they fancy is these things that can be obtained for free. The rich milk scent is a bit intoxicating. Lynch is accustomed to using hot milk to soak something, while Catherine and others are accustomed to direct soaking, which feels very bad. After eating breakfast, he simply took care of his image and stopped at a street not far from where they were renting. It's not that he has done nothing in the past few days. Of course, this does not mean that he is looking for a job. He is just considering where his first money should be obtained. Although this world is completely different from another world, there are still traces of development of some things. www.mtlnovel.com For example, you know that the land under your feet is 100 years later, for example, you know the artwork. The price of is skyrocketing every year, for example, you know. Everyone feels ambitious when standing in Lynch's current position, because most of them can grasp the pulse of the future. But the problem is that most people's ambitions can only make ambitions, it will not be realized, because now is not the future, and everything requires capital. The capital comes from here? This thing will not fall from the sky, nor will it float in the water. In fact, even if many people are given the opportunity to go back in time, they still have no ability to change their lives. Maybe there are, but some are limited. It may be to buy 1 or 2 more houses, and then wait until they are old and look at their assets doubled in their previous lives in a days. This is different from what they thought at the beginning. Some people are destined to dance, and some people can't do anything even if they give them a chance. Obviously, Lynch is the former. He already has all the qualities. He has succeeded. This is the decisive key. He stood here staring at a laundry shop across the road for most of the morning, and he was writing and drawing on a notebook. He was earning his first pot of gold. At about noon, when the traffic on the street began to drop, 2 guys in windbreakers blocked them, and one of them had a hand in the windbreaker, seeming to be holding something. "Mr. Fox wants to see you, friend." These 2 people are not good at first sight. Of course, it may be that Lynch thinks too much. He is not afraid at this time, but a smile appears on his face. "I have been waiting for you for several days." "What are you waiting for? Let's lead the way." Mr. Fox has some reputation on this street. He belongs to the kind of capable person. He is willing to help the poor and lend money to the poor to get them through. Of course, he is not a purely good person. He also needs the poor people to give him kind rewards, some of which may be more than the principal. But in general he is a good person, maybe, probably like this. In an underground office, Lynch met Mr. Fox, a gentleman who looked 36 of 9 years old and 40 years old. He is wearing the most popular dark grey suit with red and blue dots this year. The neckline is a red and blue silk scarf, which is not so formal, but also very elegant. Before Lynch got here, Mr. Fox had heard about the anomaly of this kid from his men, such as what he said before, which made him a little curious. "Aren't you afraid of me?" he asked his subordinates to press Lynch on the chair opposite the desk. "There are few people on this street who are not afraid of me." Lynch did not show the slightest sense of fear. Such a scene can only be said to be trivial. He shrugged and asked back, "Mr. Fox, will you hurt me?" These words stunned Mr. Fox. He thought about it seriously, then shook his head. "I generally don't take the initiative to hurt anyone, but if you do something unfriendly first, it is a stupid thing for anyone to hurt others for no reason. First, it will make one's own image worse, and secondly, it will be targeted by the Bureau of Investigation because of such unintended actions. The vast majority of people are looking for money, they don't look for things, and Mr. Fox is the same." "That's right, then why should I be afraid?" The calmness and smile on Lynch's face made Mr. Fox wonder for a moment. He glanced at the assistant next to him, and then put his gaze on Lynch's face again. "But my people say you have been staring at me these days, maybe you can tell me why this is. You are the Bureau of Investigation." People. Before they came, they had searched Lynch's body, and there was nothing to prove his identity. In addition, the outfits on him did not fit the style of the investigative group at all. Fox didn't think he was detective of the Bureau of Investigation. This is also where he is curious. This kid has been staring at his property and the laundry shop. He also inquired about the identity of this kid. Because of his curiosity and vigilance, this scene happened. He wanted to know what Lynch was doing. He picked up the notebook in Lynch's pocket and flipped through a few pages. It was all incomprehensible. He asked the assistant who graduated from college next to him, and the college student assistant didn't know what the words on it meant. The enthusiastic smile on Lynch's face made Fox feel a little uncomfortable. It felt like he didn't know how to describe it. It was like being cared for. "This is Mr. Fox. I have noticed the laundry business and some of your little troubles, plus I believe you have investigated me and know the problems I am facing now." Mr. Fox nodded and emphasized, "Poverty." Lynch pointed to the ceiling, attracted Mr. Fox's attention with small gestures and took back the right to speak. "You are right, so I need to get rid of the financial crisis as soon as possible. I want to do a little business with you." All the people in the office laughed instantly. Mr. Fox, his assistant, and two big guys who were not easy to see were all laughing. Lynch looked at Mr. Fox without embarrassment, waited for them to laugh for about 31, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds and then stopped before asking, "This is not a joke?" Mr. Fox laughed again. While smiling, he asked, "But I don't think there is any business between us." He said that the laughter stopped naturally, and then frowned. "You want to borrow money?" Lynch shook his head. "No, do business, Mr. Fox." Mr. Fox laughed enough. The curiosity and thirst for knowledge in the human bones made him continue the conversation, at least until he knew the answer or lost interest. He would not stop this interesting conversation. "Then what business do you want to do with me?" Lynch's confident and sunny smile as always makes people feel good. "I can provide more change, 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents, and 50 cents. They are all coins." "Have." Mr. Fox's complexion suddenly changed, and his slightly squinted eyes showed a trace of heart palpitations. If he had to interpret what this gaze was, it must be killing intent. "Do you know what I'm doing?" He couldn't help taking out a cigarette and lighting a cigarette. "You are bold." Lynch was unmoved. "I'm not afraid of being poor. Will I be afraid of other things?" The two looked at each other for a moment. It seemed that this guy named Lynch was indeed a bold person, and at the same time his words also made Mr. Fox really interested. There are some gray areas in some industries. For example, the financial company he currently runs is not completely legal. Not only is the Bureau of Investigation looking at him, but the Federal Revenue Service is also looking at him. He needs to pay taxes reasonably and legally with the money he has in his hands through some channels, without being too noticeable. Laundry is a good channel. No one cares about where each coin comes from, and they don't know where the coins come from. In the entire Baylor Federation, all laundry shops are basically controlled by these people. But they also have a problem, that is too slow. The middle class and the upper class have their own washing machines. They don't need to take their clothes to the streets to wash them. Only the poor do that. But poor people tend to save up a week's clothes to wash them once, and they have to wash all at once. For this reason, people like Mr. Fox have deliberately come up with a new charging standard, which is charged by the pound, but this is still a drop in the bucket. You can't force everyone to wash your clothes every day. Doing so will only attract the attention of the Bureau of Investigation and the IRS. This is also the biggest pain point of Mr. Fox. It's a terrible feeling that the safe is full of money, but I can't take it out to spend it. The in front of him said that he could solve this problem, so Mr. Fox suddenly became interested. What are you going to do? Lynch did not conceal his own method in the slightest. He couldn't hide it. No matter his current status, he couldn't stop Mr. Fox from investigating it. It's better to just say it and show his sincerity. I will collect a lot of coins and sell them to you in exchange for a part of the cost, and my income is this part of the difference. www.mtlnovel.com. Mr. Fox glanced at the assistant again, and the assistant whispered in his ear. After a while, he frowned and asked, "How much do you want?" Lynch's enthusiastic smile made Mr. Fox once again feel the illusion of being cared for inexplicably. 10%. Are you crazy? Mr. Fox couldn't help but yelled out, I would rather wait slowly. The price of 10% is totally unacceptable. When the transaction amount is $1, it is only 10. But when the transaction amount is 100,000 yuan, 1 million yuan, it is a distressing number. Lynch did not bargain with him immediately, but asked a new question, Mr. Fox, do you have the trade news here? Trade News is one of the newspapers with the largest circulation of the Baylor Federation. It covers the entire Baylor Federation, 17 states and all regions. The content mainly includes some national and international financial and economic trends, as well as some local financial economic changes. During a series of confrontations, Mr. Fox gradually lost the initiative. He glanced at his assistant, and the assistant nodded, indicating that there was something. Although their business is not that appropriate, their work is indeed closely related to finance. Give me a copy as early as possible, and a copy of the latest. I will let you know who is the real winner in the transaction between us. Lynch's firm and powerful voice and his confident expression made Mr. Fox begin to faintly believe it, just like when Lynch used to speak with a microphone in front of a large group of people. People looked at him and believed that what he said was true, and finally put the money in his pocket and thanked him. A few minutes later, Mr. Fox's assistant sent 2 newspapers, one of which was from 4 months ago and the other one from this week. Financial companies like Mr. Fox are actually very concerned about the financial trends of the entire country and the international community. They deal with money every day, and they know what this means. In addition, they are also very concerned about some social changes, such as employment rate, unemployment rate, and social security issues. If the unemployment rate continues to increase, they will lower interest rates while reducing large borrowings to reduce risk, which will also make their business more attractive. When the country's economy improves significantly, they will increase interest rates while encouraging people to borrow more, because people pay back. Every day, Mr. Fox's assistant reads a lot of newspapers to analyze some of the situation in the next country, and then decides whether to end certain businesses early, or pretend to forget it. This is definitely not a very simple and straightforward business. Those people are not big, and it is difficult to do it for a long time. Only people like Mr. Fox can run such a business for a long time. This is also the reason why he has spent a lot of money and hired a college student to help him. He regards this as a career, not a way to make quick money. After opening the newspaper, Lynch flipped through the newspaper for a while, about 10 minutes or so. Mr. Fox had not disturbed him, and asked him to bring him coffee and cigarettes. There is a faint expectation in his heart that this ordinary person named Lynch will surely give him a surprise. This is not an unprovoked guess, this is what he observed. It's impossible for an ordinary person like Lynch to remain calm when he is invited, let alone stare at himself when he reveals his killing intent. He is not an ordinary child. Lynch is indeed only a child at the age of Mr. Fox. He is only 20 years old. 10 minutes later, Lynch drew some lines with the pen in his hand, and then put the two newspapers in front of Mr. Fox at the same time. I drew a horizontal line under the content that needs you to read so that you can read more. See them intuitively. Mr. Fox and his assistant both looked at it seriously. After reading them back and forth several times, they didn't have the slightest clue. The information on it was some real estate agency information. They didn't find anything at all. Mr. Fox was a little confused. I don't know what these represent, do they have any special meaning? Lynch is not irritable at all. He is very patient. After all, facing a good customer and the money in his pocket, anyone who needs money can be patient. He walked to Mr. Fox's side. His men wanted to stop them, but they were stopped by Mr. Fox. This also meant that Lynch had gained the trust of Mr. Fox for a short time. If he can complete what he said before, then this trust will last a long time. This newspaper provides information on the lease of 2 apartments facing the street, among which the rent for this house is. Lynch pointed to the place where he drew the line, and did not continue. Mr. Fox subconsciously took 135 yuan. Lynch nodded in affirmation. Yes, 135 yuan, let's ignore other things first, and then see how much the house next to it is. Mr. Fox very cooperatively moved his gaze to the horizontally lined information in another newspaper, and continued to very cooperatively say, 107 yuan. The 2 apartments are on both sides of the road, and the straight line distance is no more than 100 meters. From these price changes, Mr. Fox, what have you found? After pondering for a while, Mr. Fox has already begun to think seriously and said, the monthly rent has increased by 37 yuan. In Lynch's mature and successful cases in the past, he always believes that allowing these participants to participate in the case at a deeper level can save a lot of time and avoid some problems that people may not have thought of. They will convince themselves and believe that their conclusions are correct. This is particularly evident in math problems. Before clearly pointing out that the answers to some math questions are wrong, everyone who answers the questions firmly believes that their answers are correct and that others' answers are wrong. Mr. Fox completed the in-depth participation process through a simple mathematical formula. This feeling made him begin to be surrounded by a false illusion, a false sense of security created by himself. He would not think that Lynch was a liar, because these were not what Lynch told him, but the conclusions he reached through serious thinking with his smart head, and he believed his own conclusions. The increase in rent means that it takes more money to buy these houses. It takes 4 months. Lynch paused. No, it's actually increasing every day. It's a little bit higher. You may not find out. But it does change again, do you admit it, Mr. Fox? Mr. Fox nodded. Then what does this have to do with our previous business? Of course, Mr. Fox, these houses are there. It will not change over time, such as a few more bricks, or a few tiles missing. What did it look like when it was built? What does it still look like now? It has not changed, it is constant, but the price has changed. What does it mean? Without waiting for Mr. Fox to think, Lynch gave the answer, because Mr. Fox's head could not think of this answer. What he does is to guide people to the corners they need to find at the right time, instead of encouraging them to diverge thinking. If the value of an item has not changed, but it has changed in the process of payment, it can only be said that the value of the object used for the standard has changed. In other words, in the past 4 months, the currency in our hands Lynch did not know when he took a coin out of his pocket and stuck it between the knuckles of his thumb and index finger. He lightly flicked, and the slightly hidden but audible metal tremor attracted people's attention. Mr. Fox, his assistant, and the bodyguard next to him, their eyes fell on the flying coin. Lynch said confidently, "It has been depreciating, and it has depreciated by 2,225% in 4 months, Mr. Fox." Mr. Fox's attention was collected from the 5-cent coin that fell on the newspaper, and he began to think about Lynch's words seriously, and looked at the assistant beside him. The assistant is a bit embarrassed. He is not a finance major www.mtlnovel.com, he is just learning management. If it weren't for Mr. Fox's higher salary, if it wasn't for Mr. Fox's father, he wouldn't be here. He felt that Lynch's words were not quite right, but he felt that there was no obvious error or omission. In the process, Lynch also used gold as an example of the second round, and put devaluation and currency as a kind of goods. The concept of instilling in the people in the room. He didn't lie, because these are true, and his examples are no problem. It even involved that 10 years ago, people could buy a newspaper with 5 cents, but now it takes 50 cents. Newspaper or newspaper, whether it is ink or paper, the production process and process have not changed much. It is not that newspapers have become expensive, but the value of money has depreciated. Mr. Fox, who gradually came to understand, felt a little horrified. He changed his sitting posture and said bitterly, "But our interest rate is very high, and some are still compound interest." He wanted to give himself some sense of security in this way, but these fragile senses of security were destroyed in Lynch's laugh a few seconds later. "I know, Mr. Fox, the problem is that the currencies that we devalue are not those you can take out and put in front of people, but all your assets. All your assets are depreciating at a rate of 5% every month, and this is also a kind of compound interest. If you can't send all your money to the Federal Revenue Service as soon as possible to complete the final procedures." Lynch returned to the chair across the table and sat down. He shrugged and spread his hands. "The wealth you are proud of now may not even be a fart in a few years. Do you still care about that insignificant 10%? After leaving from Mr. Fox's side, Lynch walked around on the street. After the deal was negotiated, he would soon have the first payment, and the amount of this payment was directly related to how much he invested. The more he invests, the higher the profit. In fact, even the top consortium will be very greedy for this kind of business. During this time, he has been reading the newspaper. Even if the whole world is engaged in development and construction, no matter how the financial economy improves, the annual rate of return promised by some funds has not exceeded 15%. In the first quarter of this year, the trade news disclosed some detailed data from last year. The one-year return rate of the foundation with the highest actual rate of return was only 9.74, which is less than 10%. It has become the most profitable fund last year. So this sale is very important, but at the same time there is a new problem. He needs a principal in exchange for those change and coins. Mr. Fox did not talk about the money. Based on his investigation of Lynch's background, it's impossible not to know that there is not even $100 in Lynch's body and bank account, let alone his promise to help Mr. Fox complete the transformation as soon as possible. The scale. He has to get another money. It doesn't need to be too much. A few hundred yuan or 1,000 or 2,000 is enough, because once it turns, the speed will only get faster and faster. For a small amount of money, he plans to talk to Catherine when he goes back in the evening. Talk. Although he felt that he did something like this, but for the future, this is also something that can't be helped. Time passed bit by bit while wandering. Today, Lynch returned home early. At 6:30 in the evening, Catherine walked back from the outside with a bag. "Is the shredded meat scraps and some not-so-fresh-looking vegetables in the supermarket where she works today? These things are basically divided up by the employees. After all, the purpose of accepting oppression and exploitation here is to get these things for free. Once back in the apartment, Catherine was a little surprised. During this time, Lynch would always come very late. He came back early like today. This was the first time in the family. At the beginning, she still imagined that Lynch could honestly find a job, preferably in the factory. Although the work in the factory is very hard and there are certain dangers, I have to say that the welfare and social security of the workers are the best. Those big business owners not only need to take care of all aspects of them, but they can also join organizations like unions. Catherine, who works in a supermarket, cannot join them because she is not a worker. Moreover, there is no such unofficial organization as the Cashier Guild. Nightmares are always immersed in it, but good dreams are easy to wake up. For a week, Lynch, who seemed to have just re-energized, returned to the original starting point, but now he has changed a trick. He is no longer staying at home, but an excuse to find work and go out to spend time. Catherine became frustrated when she thought of this place. She felt that her past choice was not just as simple as stupid, her eyes were also blind. It is precisely because of these things that she realizes how correct her mother's words are. Good looking is useless, and life needs foundation, not good looking. She raised her head and glanced at Lynch, then changed her shoes and carried the bag into the kitchen, and began to wash the crumbs. These minced meat scraps are all picked from the bone racks. The shapeless ones are mostly finger-sized pieces. For some reasons, they look more color than neatly placed beef. It's darker. So even if their prices are very low, it is difficult to sell them. Most people buy them not for their own consumption, but to feed their dogs. In fact, there is nothing wrong with these minced meat crumbs. The silent atmosphere in the room is full of something that makes people feel uncomfortable, and that kind of thing is still spreading and surging. Lynch sat on a sofa they picked up from the garbage dump and looked at his girlfriend who was silently handling food. It was obvious that the distance between the two was less than 10 meters, but it seemed that an abyss appeared in the middle. "Do you have any extra money?" Lynch asked. The movements in Catherine's hand paused slightly. She did not turn her head or say anything. After a short pause, she continued to deal with the work she was doing. "There are some, less than 500 yuan, which I saved this year. It is not easy to save money, especially for young people with only high school education. Rent, electricity, water, heating, some necessary expenses and losses, plus 2 people living with only 1 person working, it is very difficult to save more than 400 yuan. Suddenly, there was something heavy in the treacherous atmosphere, which pressed against the chests of the 2 people. Neither of them spoke again until Catherine made dinner. As always, the crumbs plus fried eggs, some tattered vegetable leaves, and some lasagna crumbled into 1 or 2 centimeters. These are things that supermarkets need to discard every day. Now they support many poor families. My mother came to me today. Catherine broke her piece while eating. She doesn't want us to continue like this, but I can't convince her. Lynch put down the knife and fork and watched the plate in front of the girl add some fresh seasoning, which was transparent, a bit bitter, and slightly salty. In fact, Catherine has already said very clearly. She cannot persuade her mother, so one of them must be persuaded by the other, and it is only possible that she was persuaded. The things that were not very tasty on the plate became even more unpalatable. Lynch sighed, "When will you leave?" Catherine was about to collapse. "Tomorrow, my mother and brother will come to pick me up. I'm sorry, I don't want this, but..." "Okay, you don't need to apologize, it's me who should apologize." Lynch reached out and touched the girl's tear-soaked cheek. www.mentalnovel.com. He needs to pay for what his body did before. For 2 young people for more than 2 years, all the burden of life has been on this girl who is only 20 years old. There is no doubt that Lynch is a scumbag, a scumbag. This kind of life gradually wiped out all the girl's fantasy about romance and the future. After experiencing these, she began to bow to reality and fate, even if she might still retain a trace of fantasy in the deepest part of her heart. For example, no. For example, Lynch will not ask the girl to stay. Whether she says she wants to leave first, or she is still uncertain in the future, she is definitely full of some uneasy and dangerous lives, which is not suitable for this girl. Although it is cruel to say that, the fact is the fact. After the two experienced an unforgettable night, Catherine left with her things early the next morning, but they also left something for Lynch. A passbook and the key to the apartment. I want to thank the bank for not caring about who comes to deposit and withdraw the money in the passbook. This may also be proof that Catherine bid farewell to her past life. Cleaned up his own Lynch again. In the morning, he took out all the money in his passbook, 449 yuan and 35 cents. Then he found the landlord, and after talking with the landlord for about half an hour, he refunded 100 yuan for the house with half a month left. Originally it was 75 yuan, but Lynch didn't need those things. The landlord felt that this transaction could not be regarded as a loss, and finally agreed and gave an extra 25 yuan. The change is reserved to meet the needs of the first few days of life, and the rest will be rolled into his plan. He is already a little impatient, and he desperately wants to teach this simple world. "Sir, do you want a newspaper?" A half-size boy with a dirty cap and a huge leather satchel appeared in front of Lynch. The boy looked like he was only 11 or 12 years old. He looked at Lynch expectantly, and opened his shoulder bag to reveal the newspaper inside. These children are all under the management of various headers, which are not newspaper headlines, but refer to the managers of those newsboys. They have firmly controlled the mobile newspaper sales market in certain areas by certain relationships or means or other methods. Only their own newsboys can sell newspapers. Others cannot enter, and the newsstands are not among them. Every morning they would gather outside the newspaper office to load the newspapers with the machine heat on the carts, pull them back to their base, and then distribute them to these half-old children and drive them to the street. Every child will have a sales standard, the lowest limit. If it is lower than this limit, they will be beaten or starved. Only after this standard can they enjoy food, but there is no reward. Welfare homes and some poor families have already taken away the pay for their work. All they have to do is to work as much as possible in exchange for a shelter from the wind and rain, and 2 meals to sustain their lives. Some people may think this is hell, but compared to those who live in a more desperate abyss, these children are like in heaven. Lynch took a $1 bill from his pocket and chose 2 newspapers. The local newspapers are 50 cents each, and the nationally published newspapers are only $1. The newspaper boy continued to thank Lynch for patronizing, and even did not forget to take off his hat and bow. For Lynch, 2 newspapers for $1 may be an inevitable part of life, but they are also the salvation that this child wants most every day. The child was about to leave, but was called back by Lynch. "Sir, what else can I ask you for?" asked the half-year-old child. Children like him tend to adapt to this society better than those who have good family conditions and are still going to school. Looking at the still immature but already showing some small faces that are ripened by reality and filled with smiles, Lynch was a little emotional. "This is the worst time, but it is also the best time." He asked, "Want to make money?" The child nodded immediately, "I want to dream of Mr., but I do not do anything illegal. Where there is light, there will be darkness, and the brighter the darkness sets off the light, and on the contrary, the light will also make the darkness darker. Some people use children to sell newspapers, but others use children to commit crimes. These are actually not top secret rumors. In the process of the booming society of this society, everyone is blinded by wealth. As long as they can make money, someone will do it, no matter what the job is." Lynch shook his head, "Do you have 97 points? Although the newsboy hesitated a little, he quickly took out 97 cents from his pocket. There was some change in his pocket. When he came out, he arranged the header and put it in everyone's backpack. The money does not belong to them. After returning, the header will make statistics. If someone loses money, they will be hungry or beaten. This also makes the children very sensitive to money. Seeing the 97 cents taken out of the child's handle coins, Lynch took out another dollar, put $1 in the child's left hand, and took the 97 from his other hand. Point. Sir, it's still 3 minutes short here, I'll find it for you now. The newspaper boy thought that Lynch wanted to change the change. Urban traffic usually has 2 tickets, one is within 5 kilometers, and the other is 25. It's 5 kilometers away. Whether it is a bus or subway, there is no change. If you give 50 cents, they will only give you 2 tickets instead of 1 and change. This also makes many people prepare some change on their bodies to avoid losses. Lynch stopped the newsboy's actions and asked again, "Want to make money?" The newsboy hasn't reacted yet. It is the first time that he can take advantage of it so openly, which makes him a little uneasy. He hesitated for a moment before nodding and saying, "Yes, sir, I want to dream." The gradual smile on Lynch's face made the child feel like seeing the sun just rising, not dazzling. The light is very gentle, but it can tear the darkness and illuminate the entire sky. "Do you have 97 points?" he asked again. After a brief astonishment, shock, and confusion, the newsboy quickly took out the 97 points in the bag and held it in the palm of his hand. His face flushed, and he could see that he was excited, nervous, and a little skeptical. He looked at Lynch with clear eyes and what this guy was going to do in front of him. Lynch took out another piece of money and put it in the hand of the newsboy, and took away the 97 points in his other hand. He asked with a smile, "Do you want to make money?" At this time, the newsboy shivered with excitement. He nodded and found all the change that could make up to 97 cents. "It's all here, sir." Lynch counted $12 in his hand, and put all the change into his pocket. "It seems that you only have so much." The newsboy was a little excited. Although he only exchanged 14 yuan of change from Lynch, his own income had already gained 42 cents, which was nearly half of 1 yuan. You must know that no matter how well he is doing this job, he will not get even a penny, and the head of the newspaper will give all the compensation to the orphanage. This newsboy is the child who grew up in the orphanage. In the words of the orphanage, they should do something for the orphanage. After all, the orphanage raised them so large and did not ask for anything in return. Generally speaking, as long as they are over 10 years old, they are not adopted. www.mtlnovel.com. The chance of being adopted later is very small. Except for some girls, they are adopted for other reasons and purposes. However, the orphanage will not take extra care. When the children are over 14 years old, they can refuse to be adopted. At the same time, when they are over 16 years old, they must leave here and enter the society alone to survive. In other words, boys over 10 years old are basically marginal people in the orphanage. It is difficult to earn adoption subsidies and donations from these children, so they must go to work. They have to use their work to compensate for the efforts of the orphanage to raise them over the years. As to whether it is right to do so, it doesn't matter, because no one cares about this. Everyone's eyes will only be fixed on themselves. Things that are related to interests. How to integrate into the society as soon as possible after being expelled from the orphanage and find a place to stay is the most troublesome thing for these children right now. If they can get some money before they leave, it doesn't need much. As long as they can survive a short period of time, they have a chance to survive. Lynch's exchange of change made the kid discover a bright road, just like what he asked before, "Do you want to make money?" And his own answer, "I want to dream." "Collect the money," the newspaper boy hesitantly asked. "Sir, will you be here tomorrow?" Lynch nodded, "I will be here before lunch. If I am not here, I will show up the next day." He tapped his wrist with his finger. "You still have enough time." These children who have already started to come into contact with society immediately understood what Lynch meant. About 10 minutes later, a group of newsboys surrounded this side, and people kept coming. Today's money. Mr. Fox looked at Lynch with great effort, and the money bag that had been transported back and forth was silent for a while after running back and forth. Honestly, his people have been staring at Lynch, so much so that he already knows how Lynch got the change. He felt curious and shocked for Lynch's head. What kind of person can think of such a way to quickly obtain these coins, and it will not cause obvious impact on the society? He can do that according to Lynch's method at this time, so that he can save 10% of the handling fee, but he doesn't plan to do that. Suddenly he realized that Lynch's head was really valuable compared to the 10% handling fee. This head, which was always surprising, was his greatest wealth. Do you want to count? Lynch sighed with relief, straightened up and moved his body, sat down on the chair with an unimaginative butt, took out a pack of cigarettes, lit one, and took a pleasant sip. I can wait. Mr. Fox shook his head and asked his men to take the coins away. The money would be sent to the Federal Revenue Service for counting and registration at a later date, then paying taxes and depositing them in the bank. For people like Mr. Fox, there hasn't been a good way to solve these problems for some time. To put it less politely, most of the people in this industry are not social elites. They don't have a high degree of education, and they don't know much about things in many professional fields. Some people don't even know many words. They don't need this for their business, as long as they are not afraid of death and fear of things. This has also caused many problems. In recent years, the Baylor FBI and the IRS have been staring at these people. In addition to some of their behaviors, they are also staring at the money in their pockets. They don't have much legitimate business, which also makes them face a lot of troubles, and having money but not being able to spend it has become a kind of silent pain. For this reason, the Baylor Federation has also issued a series of legal provisions to restrict large-value cash transactions. In the regulations, cash transactions exceeding 5,000 yuan must be reported, and more than 50,000 yuan must be reviewed. Even large amounts of cash deposited in the bank need to inform in advance the source of the funds and the possible purpose of use, and also provide sufficient and complete tax payment certificates to prove that there is no problem with the money. The all-round blockade, coupled with the strict guarding of the staff members of the Federal Revenue Service who are labeled as investigators, agents, and even agents, makes it difficult for everyone. Obviously, the vault is full of banknotes, but I can't get it out. Even if I go to enjoy it once, I may be subject to targeted interrogation and scrutiny. Such days are really difficult. But now, Mr. Fox has seen something special from Lynch, not just such a simple thing as a coin transaction, but also more things that he has been longing for. He came back to his senses in a daze, looked at Lynch, and shrugged his shoulders. I should pay you. The fraction is removed, 560 yuan. Lynch generously erased the fraction of a few yuan, also in order to increase mutual trust. Mr. Fox smiled. He opened the drawer, and there were many banknotes in it, not to mention 50 and 100 denominations. When his hand reached for the $100 bill, Lynch coughed slightly. I think 5 and 10 yuan would be better, what do you think? Mr. Fox nodded calmly and counted $560 to him. 100 yuan bills are rarely used in daily life. Most of the time, they are used in public settlements and some large cash transactions that have been reported. This is a society where there is no network and electronic office. In fact, there are many crazy loopholes in the bank. In order to avoid some of the problems they have discovered, large transactions between companies still use cash transactions instead of telephone transfers, especially interbank transfers. There will always be some problems. If someone is spending $100 in bills outside, this guy will definitely be spotted by certain departments for the first time. Don't underestimate people's sense of justice. Many shop owners will receive some brochures or some people will directly dictate some content to them during the process of some official business, such as the process of tax filing. For example, when someone pays with a $100 bill, what should they do, what benefits they will have if they do, and what harm they will have if they don't. This also makes it difficult to consume 100 yuan banknotes in low and middle class society. If a person has more than 100 yuan banknotes, the judge will consider approving a search warrant if the evidence may not be sufficient. This is also the most painful place for people like Mr. Fox. The money is in the drawer or anywhere. Not only can they not spend it, but they don't even need it for others. The reason why he showed that he was going to take the $100 bill was actually testing Lynch. If Lynch was silent, their business would be limited to the trading of coins. A person who can't distinguish the severity, doesn't know how powerful, and is not careful and vigilant enough, doesn't know the deeper contact. www.mtlnovel.com. Fortunately, Lin Chi passed this level smoothly. Mr. Fox put his hands on the armrests of the chair. He tilted his head slightly to look at Lynch. This speed is too slow, do you have a better way? Lynch also put the banknotes in his pocket without counting. It will be more and more in a few days, and soon your darlings will be visible. Mr. Fox did not continue to ask, but he was relieved. I look forward to this day. The city of Sabine, where Lynch is located, is also a small city that ranks low in the second-tier cities in the entire Baylor Federation. The total population of the entire city is less than 800,000. But every day, this small city can sell at least 100,000 newspapers. In other words, even if they are all local newspapers, this represents 50,000 yuan in change. And in Lynch's plan, there are not only such channels for change, but also various retail industries. Now the main currency in circulation in the entire society is the coins and the 1, 2, and 5 banknotes. Except for the 2 and 5 denomination banknotes, it is impossible to appear in the laundry. One banknote may appear. After his influence began to expand, he was able to attract all the change in the city, but this transaction could not be done for a long time. The tax bureau will follow him, and the investigation bureau will also investigate whether he has close contact with these people. He doesn't want to be a man like Mr. Fox, hiding in corners and shadows forever. What he wants to be a tycoon, a legend. He has to stand in the spotlight and accept people's admiration and admiration. That is his life. What he is doing now is to start the game as perfect as possible. Wealth gleams with golden light and will attract all those who are lost in the mist of poverty. They may not get enough wealth to make them shine, but they can change their lives somehow. This sentence was said by Lynch. In just a few days, the entire Sabine masthead knew that there was someone who could quickly turn change into whole money, and it was still profitable. A large amount of change is constantly rolling in Lynch's pocket and turned into whole money, not only by the newspaper heads, but also by some newsstands and retail stores. 3% of the profit does not require any effort, and there is no risk. Perhaps this profit is only 3 cents of profit in the eyes of many people. But when the principal is large enough, this will also become a considerable figure. 100 yuan, 1000 yuan, just give the money to Lynch, and then get more money back. It's that simple. According to various bills of the Baylor Federation on wages and working hours, as well as specific adjustments to the regional bills, an average worker in Sabine City earns about 200 to 300 yuan a month. If the nature of the job is more dangerous, the salary may be higher, but there are still relatively few types of work, and the salary is almost like this. 10 yuan is already equivalent to a worker's work day, but there is no need to pay any labor for Lynch. You only need to give him the money, and then you can get the money. Some people really don't like it, but more people like it. A large amount of change began to gather and appeared in an orderly manner in Mr. Fox's laundry. Just a week later, when Lynch pushed the trolley into the laundry shop controlled by Mr. Fox, 2 guys in black woolen trench coats, formal clothes, waistcoats, and white shirts appeared in front of him. This also made him understand why Fox first said that he does not look like a member of the federal government department, because he lacks the outfit that can be seen through at a glance, and the faces of these people wishing everyone to know their specific identities. Arrogance. Lynch. The person blocking the trolley yelled Lynch's name casually as usual, and then lifted the placket of his windbreaker to reveal the wallet that hung on the pocket inside. Half of the wallet is in the upper pocket on the inside of the windbreaker, which prevents it from falling randomly, and the other half with the ID is hanging outside. The FBI people are like this, they will find it very handsome to do so. As for why there is such a stupid idea, it is probably because it has something to do with some popular movies in the past 2 years. The actors are really handsome in doing that, but ordinary people will only feel stupid if they move these things into reality. I'm an investigator from the Federal Revenue Service, I need your cooperation. There is no room for negotiation, and the tone is not just as tough as it is also thorny. Lynch smiled and asked, should I raise my hands? In fact, from the very beginning, he knew that he wanted to deal with these people, and not only this time, he would continue to deal with them in the future, but he didn't expect that he would be targeted so soon. This is the game. The golden light of wealth will not only attract those who are eager to bathe in the golden light to be able to mix some benefits, but also ordinary people who are eager for wealth, but there will also be some picky bad guys. These words of him sounded like they were mocking 2 investigators. Generally speaking, people always associate raised hands with firearms. And obviously these 2 investigators are not qualified to wear weapons. In the Baylor IRS system, investigators are also the lowest level employees, far inferior to the above agents and agents, although many people I am curious why the tax bureau needs agents. The guy behind Lynch grabbed his wrist with one hand, grabbed his back collar with the other, and pushed him against the wall to give him some great taste. The pedestrians on the street immediately moved a certain distance away to avoid being caught in it. Some people left, and some people stopped to watch the excitement. The investigator who had spoken to Lynch once again presented his ID and dispersed the crowd. He pushed Lynch's trolley, and his companions led Lynch and his trolley into the alley on the side of the road. There was a little embarrassed Lynch rubbing his cheekbones. When his face was pressed against the wall, he touched the wall. It hurts, maybe some bruise, but he didn't care much. An investigator was flipping his trolley, opening the box of the trolley, taking out some old clothes and throwing them on the ground, as if looking for something. Another person asked, recently you and Fox are walking very close. Are you serving him? He also took out a small notebook and a pen, seemingly ready to record something at any time. In fact, the Federal Revenue Service has long been eyeing people like Mr. Fox, but this staring does not mean that people like Mr. Fox must be brought to justice. Where there is light, there will always be darkness. This is not dark. Characteristics are the characteristics of light. If there is no Lynch, maybe this kind of strange but very socially demanding balance can be maintained for a while, until the new local tax bureau chief takes office, or the current chief needs some merits, then they will find Mr. Fox trouble. But the problem is that now there is one more Lynch, Mr. Fox and Lynch. Some of their strange actions are speeding up certain things out of control. Catch a tax evasion criminal, and the amount involved is huge. In the federal tax system is definitely a huge credit, the kind that can get promotion opportunities. But if Mr. Fox is allowed to get out of the quagmire, no one will praise the current head of the local taxation bureau, but will only wonder if they have any behind-the-scenes transactions. In addition, there have been some possible personnel changes within the Federal Taxation Office of Sabine City, and some people can't sit still. As soon as these signs appeared, the local Federal Revenue Service immediately began to take action. After checking Lynch's identity and what he had done recently, they roughly figured out the problem between him and Mr. Fox. In the eyes of these experienced agents, Lynch is just a lucky kid. He accidentally discovered a way to make money. If Lynch is used as a breakthrough point, it is very likely to cooperate and directly win Mr. Fox. This group of people. But the first thing they had to do was to figure out what Mr. Fox and Lynch were doing, and whether it was the same as they thought, so there was this attack. Facing the fierce investigator Lynch, he always kept a smile. A smile can draw the distance between people and let people relax their vigilance. Can I know your name? The investigator he was facing with a grin www.mtlnovel.com suddenly stepped forward and punched Lynch in the stomach. In a moment, his stomach was turned upside down, and there was a nausea urge. You don't need to know my name, you just have to answer the question, understand? The investigator grabbed Lynch's hair and asked him to bend down and look up at himself. I'm asking you again, you and what are Fox's transactions and how did his money get into the bank? The muscles on Lynch's face trembled, and he straightened up slowly, his smile reappeared on his face, he gestured like a pistol with his right hand, pressed his chin, looked at the investigator and said, you have a gun, give me a bullet and try. The investigator did not respond to his words for a short time, and then he was embarrassed, but when he met Lynch's gaze, it was as if he was poured into a basin of ice water, and the fire was completely turned off. There was expectation in his bright and clear eyes, and in accordance with the content of his tone and a little bit of madness, the investigator's heart shrank suddenly. He can clearly feel that this person is crazy. He swallowed subconsciously and looked away, but then turned back, staring at Lynch, pushed him away, and shouted, "Answer the question." He actually already had some timidity, but he used this way to cover up his timidity while keeping a distance from Lynch. He didn't want to expose his true heart to an older child who had just left school for a few years. Lynch looked as if nothing had happened, raised his head slightly, facing the wide sky above the alley, showing the brightest smile. "May I know your name, sir?" "There is nothing here." Another investigator didn't know what happened here. He threw out the worn-out clothes in the two boxes, including the wooden boxes used to hold them, and they were also split into several pieces. "There are no coins or change here, not to mention the hundreds or thousands of change in the wire report, not even a coin." The investigator who was in the delicate confrontation heard it and the first reaction was impossible. They had already investigated almost clearly. This kid named Lynch has been exchanging change on a large scale in unimaginable ways. Before Lynch appeared, no one would lose money at such a loss to change. He pioneered that. Behind his almost endless change, it was considered by the investigators of the Sabine City Taxation Bureau to use it for Fox. During this period of time, Lynch has only contacted Fox, and has not contacted anyone else. In addition, in the past few days, the tax return of the laundry shop under Fox's name has increased significantly. The Sabine tax office believes that Lynch is Mr. Key. In fact, someone has been staring at him since the day before yesterday. According to his law of action, he should now send the collected coins to the laundry. On the surface, he is going to wash the clothes, but he is actually breaking the law. Trade. Then he will continue to exchange the change until the next time he makes up a certain amount. Just grab the change in his hand, mark it, and let Lynch send the coin to the laundry, and the entire chain of evidence is complete. Once Fox starts to declare the tax situation, he will immediately arrange for a commissioner to check the information he submitted, and then grab a scene and send him to prison. Everything is calculated well, but there is a problem here. Except for a pile of old clothes, there is not even a coin on the car. Where did the money go? In a short period of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 seconds, the investigator's eyes showed a brief loss of consciousness, and then he looked back at Lynch and pointed at him. "Be careful," said, slapped the skirt of the windbreaker, and another investigator quickly left here. They wanted to rush to another scene. Rich work experience made them not only place hope on this group of people. Another group raided Lynch's current temporary residence. If there is no money here, then the money must be in his room. It's just that the investigator always felt that things would not be so simple. This young man, Lynch. He couldn't see through, and he was not at all like a young man who had just walked out of the ivory tower and remained in awe of the world. Lynch watched the two investigators leave the alley. He spat, bent over to pick up all the clothes on the floor, and then pushed the cart out of the alley. The sun shone on his face, and he couldn't see the way he was humiliated and punched just now, as if nothing had happened, and his smile had not changed. A few minutes later, he came to the laundry, and went directly into the storage room behind the laundry. Then two young men greeted him with tools and started to dismantle the trolley. The trolley is not small. The main structure is made of strong steel pipes. The steel wire is used as the lining, which can be seen through at a glance, so the investigator did not inspect the trolley carefully. The manager of the laundry shop on the side handed a cigarette over, lit a fire for Lynch, and apologized. "I'm very sorry, I already know what happened just now, but we didn't help you." Lynch's gaze passed over the shoulder of the shop manager. He watched as the two workers lifted the steel tube of the disassembled trolley laboriously and began to lean towards a basket. With the sound of metal crashing, coins of various colors poured out of the steel pipe like tap water. Lynch retracted his gaze and fell on the store manager. He shrugged his shoulders indifferently. "It's okay. I always have to deal with them. That's why I refuse. I don't like trouble." Mr. Fox has expressed his desire to solicit Lynch more than once during this period. He is willing to give Lynch a super high salary of 3,000 yuan a month. In a society where the average monthly income per capita is only 200 to 300, 10 times the average monthly salary is enough to make many people tempted, but Lynch does not. He knows that a person like Fox who walks on the grey track will find it difficult to get rid of the surveillance of some people in his life. Once he agrees, he will be one of them. In the future, no matter what he does, someone will stare at him. He doesn't join, that's another matter. His youngness and his shallowness will not make people pay too much attention to him. When people began to pay attention to him, he had almost completed the original accumulation. Furthermore, he looks down upon a guy who lends money to the poor to live in a small city. The store manager smiled, and said nothing, but Lynch asked again, "Who is the one who beat me?" He lowered his head, smoking a cigarette, looking down, his hair and smoke covered his eyes, and the store manager could not observe his true emotions through Lynch's eyes. "Michael, the head of the investigation team of the Sabine Federal Revenue Service, he is a very troublesome person. You'd better not think about those inappropriate ideas." The store manager kindly reminded that the federal tax itself is a system of its own. They not only have investigators, detectives, agents, and even their own militarized troops. It sounds ridiculous and absurd, but this is the fact that a regular, complete, and most regular professional military training unit is used to target certain special armed antitox phenomena. So most people will tell those newbies that you can do most of the things you want, but before the 7th of each month, you must go to the local tax office to file your taxes, otherwise. Michael, as the leader of the investigation team of the Sabine Federal Revenue Service, although his status is not the highest www.mtlnovel.com, he can be regarded as a middle-level person. Even Fox is unwilling to offend each other without a reason. For these tax inspectors, everyone has flaws. Because a person cannot accurately remember the ratio of each income to tax, as long as they make a wrong decimal point or a certain digit after the decimal point, they can send you to prison. Lynch nodded, pinched the cigarette in both hands and took a sigh. "I know, next time I see him, I will take the initiative to let go." The store manager patted Lynch on the shoulder, and did not continue to say more on this topic. "How much is it this time?" "Not a fraction, 4,500 yuan." The store manager was slightly stunned after listening, and then laughed. He took out several rolls of banknotes tied with rubber bands from his pocket. "Are all in denominations of 5 and 10 yuan, these banknotes are also very old and can be easily spent. For the whole society, these 5 yuan and 10 yuan bills are like these coins in a laundry shop. No one can prepare and say what happened to each coin to appear here. The tax bureau can only make the money clean according to the amount of the laundry reported, and it is deposited in the bank under their witness." Lynch rolled the money and put it back into the trolley. He waited for a while, waited for his dirty clothes to wash the dishes, and took them all with him, and then pushed the trolley away. At the same time, on the other side, a group of people had just raided Lynch's temporary residence. Not only did they not find a copper plate, but not even a valuable thing. Damn it! They didn't get any valid evidence, and they alarmed Lynch and Fox. This would cause them more trouble, and the investigation may be terminated. With a loud bang, a chair fell apart in Michael's hand, and his partner hurriedly stopped between him and the informant, trying to calm Michael down as much as possible. Today's operation completely failed. Whether it was Lynch who temporarily rushed to deliver the goods, or the other team that searched his temporary residence, no abnormalities were found at all. Don't say they found at least 5,000 yuan of change in the online population. They didn't even see the $1 change, whether it was Lynch himself or in that room. The failure of the action means that Michael will lose face in front of his colleagues. The class and job relations within the Federal Revenue Service make this special department have an unimaginable competitiveness in this special department. Everyone wants to be an agent, not an investigator. Michael is the one who has a good chance of being promoted. But if this failed action disturbs Lynch and Fox and causes the follow-up plan to fail, then he will become a laughingstock, and don't expect to be promoted in 2 or 3 years. When most people encounter problems and troubles, they will put the blame on others. Michael attributed the failure to the informant and gave unreliable information. So he asked the informer to this room, then raised the chair amidst the rage and roar, and slammed it on his back. Do you know how much I lost because of your misinformation? While struggling to break free from his partner's block, he pointed his finger at the informant who was lying on the table and looked painful. The informant is a newspaper head, and the main intelligence channels in Sabine and other cities are in the hands of some professional intelligence collection agencies and heads. Newsboys will tell the masthead about some different things they find. This is another job between masthead and the newsboys. They may not pay the paperboys for this. They have no money or rewards, but the paperboys still do so obediently in exchange for harsh favors. Some clever investigators and detectives have similar informants, and at the same time, a masthead does not only serve a certain home. Everyone does not come out to buy and sell information for any sense of justice and morality, but for money, and there is no need to claim that they are too noble. There are people like Michael too, but not many. It is a very stupid act to spread the anger on the online person. The head of the masthead was twisted and tangled because of the back being smashed by the chair, and his eyes glowed with hatred, and the hatred quickly became docile. He has a handle in Michael's hands. He had used a young girl before, and something happened later, which happened to be discovered by Michael. Michael took the girl away, and also left some evidence, such as the recording of his confession and his handwriting and the criminal history of his fingerprints. I didn't lie, the child in my hand gave him nearly 1,500 yuan in change, I swear I didn't lie, he defended himself, and prayed that all the terrible things would pass soon. He seems to have forgotten that there was a girl who prayed this way, but did not get the result she hoped. Michael pushed his partner away and walked to the edge of the table. He grabbed the head of the head and punched him with a fist. His partner stood on the side without further blocking. As long as Michael doesn't use things, he won't interfere too much. At least he can't beat people with his bare hands, but he can take things. He does this to prevent accidents, not really wanting Michael to be violent. Of course, if it really kills people, there is no way to solve it. It's just a little troublesome, and there are a lot of things to do. Sabine is a small city. Whether it is the Bureau of Investigation or the Taxation Bureau, people in the court are familiar with them. They will not sentence a promising government worker to death for a person walking on the edge of gray. Can be acquitted in court to a large extent. After all, some small accidents in the process of hunting for fugitives are also acceptable things. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. Hit several punches in a row, and when the masthead's cheek was swollen and deformed, Michael lowered his fist. He shook his hands, picked up the cup with water on the table and raised it, and poured cold water on the head of the newspaper. The water slid down along the hair, making his vague consciousness suddenly awake, and then the intense pain and partially unconscious numbness made him feel a little, at a loss. It hurts, but he doesn't know where it hurts. The person who arranged you, give him 5,000 yuan of change this afternoon, and then we will catch the scene. Michael quickly found a way. He looked back at his partner, and the partner nodded slightly to agree to his plan. From a judicial point of view, such behavior that may be suspected of inducing crime is itself illegal, and all the behaviors and evidence collected by the suspect in this process have no legal effect. But this is a small city after all, everyone knows it, there is no need to make each other's faces look bad because of things that won't cause trouble outside. Sometimes for frontline detection staff, it is normal to manipulate the evidence chain a little bit to allow the criminals to smoothly pass the law. Everyone has long been used to it. He pulled the hair of the newspaper again, and tore his hair back, so that he had to lift up the stupid face of his swollen cheek to look at himself. Understood. The dodging gaze of the masthead dissipated the anger in Michael's heart and certain emotions that he couldn't say. He is still the Michael who makes people unable to reject, not the guy who is suddenly a little timid and gives way. Yes, I understand. Michael released his hand, and his wet hair let some water stains fall on his palm. He reached out and wiped the clothes on the masthead, then patted the swollen face, amidst the screams of the masthead. He left with a smile of satisfaction. Calm was restored in the room, and the head's eyes changed from extremely short hatred, and madness, and gradually became docile. He stood up slowly, and he just straightened his waist, and suddenly there was a heartache that made him crouch his upper body. He picked up his hat and pressed it on his head, paused for a minute or two, and left this room. Room www.mtlnovel.com. On the other side, Lynch, who returned to his temporary home from the laundry shop, immediately chose to call the police when he looked at the messed up room. Yes, call the police. He didn't silently assume that nothing happened, although he knew what happened here. The police arrived soon. They looked at the scene and immediately had a judgment. In addition, Lynch said that he had lost 500 yuan. This was obviously a burglary case, and the amount was not small. As for how to detect it, it depends on Lynch's luck. In the words of the police officer, no one knows who came in, and there are no witnesses nearby. If the other party does not continue to commit the crime and is caught, it will be difficult to recover Lynch. Loss basically means that the case ends here. As the police were about to leave, Lynch suddenly added some clues. Mr. Police. The policeman who was standing at the door and was responsible for taking notes on the scene retracted his attention from his colleagues, and then looked at Lynch. Yes. I remember, I also lost a gold ring. It was a gift I was going to give to my girlfriend. It was engraved with my beloved Catherine. He sighed regretfully. I should take it with you. The police sympathized with this young man even more. He wrote this small detail at the bottom of the transcript and comforted, this is a very important clue. If that guy wants to get rid of in the near future, maybe we will find out. Anything else to add? Lynch shook his head. No, no more, thank you for coming, sir. The policeman retracted the pen, holding the writing board. He held up the brim of his hat. Wait for our good news, boy. After simply tidying up the room, Lynch had visitors. His house is an old 4-story building facing the street. The first and second floors are a small bar, and the third and fourth floors are ordinary residents. Many hotels or pubs will have short-term rental rooms on the second floor, for 3 or 5 days, or a week, and accept oneta temporary rental at the shortest, which is more like a hotel or hotel. This pattern was first discovered from drunk people. The owner of the tavern would give them a bed and then charge them an extra money. Soon most taverns started to do this. No one complained about paying for the drunk. Alcohol is a very special thing. It can make some people unconsciously thrown into a high-end room to sleep over and pay a little more for a night. It can also make it simple and straightforward for some people. So every bar and pub, all need some rooms. It is also destined that Lynch's current place of residence will not be too remote, an unpopulated suburb, where people come and go, whether it is day or night. There will be a lot of pedestrians passing by. The police said that no witnesses were found. They may be veterans of habitual offenders. In fact, it is impossible to have witnesses. Whether it is other residents living on the second floor, the bartender behind the bar on the first floor, or the few sparse guests, it is impossible to know nothing. But they won't say that. First of all, Lynch has no direct interest with them, and secondly, there is no need to be targeted by the Federal Revenue Service because of a person who doesn't know and is not related. Everyone has chosen to remain silent. But this happened to make the police misunderstand certain things, and later had room for manipulation. He just cleaned up the messy room. When someone came to the door, it was a few kids selling newspapers. The leather bags they slung were bulging. Everyone seemed to be struggling, and their faces flushed, partly because of the heavy leather bag, and partly because of excitement. The masthead promised a few of them. As long as the money is delivered and some details in the room are remembered, they will be able to get an extra reward this month. Each person is not less than 50 yuan. This money is very important to children of their age. They will start living independently in 2 or 3 years. They must save some savings to face the society before this. The opportunity is hard won, although it is only 50 yuan. Before Lin Chi closed the door, he glanced at the door. The tavern he was in was on the edge of the main road. There was a corridor outside the door, and the road outside the corridor was guardrails. Standing here, you can see the big outside at a glance. Most things. There is nothing unusual, but his heart is already active. With his years of experience in fighting against, these children are suspicious. It is true that these newsboys have been trading with him these days, but the headlines will also come, but they don't enter the room and basically stand on the corridor outside. They gave these children a large amount of change, and naturally they had to stare at them to prevent them from running away. While protecting their property, they could also deter these children, but today there is no header outside the corridor. What does this mean? Any abnormal phenomenon means that there is a deeper problem. There are 2 possibilities for the absence of the header. The first possibility is that he does not want to have any direct relationship with himself here. The second possibility is that he knew it was dangerous here, so even if he cared about the change and didn't show up at the scene, he had a way to ensure that his money would not go wrong. This is a conclusion that can be drawn without thinking, otherwise he would not let these newsboys come with a large amount of change to exchange the whole money. Adding to the things Lynch had encountered before, he already knew with a high probability what was going to happen next. Not only is he not afraid, but there is a hint of excitement in his heart, a hint of eagerness to try. How much money is there? He took a small wooden box from one side, put it on the cart, and asked the newsboys to pour the money in. Several children leaned over and said, "A total of 5,000 yuan, sir." 5,000 yuan. Lynch laughed. His eyes looked at the cowhide bags of several newsboys. "This is really an unexpected number, I thought it would be less." The money is too much, enough to convict him directly, which is more certain of his thinking. If someone is setting up a game, he is the one in the game. If someone from the tax bureau or the investigation bureau rushes in, and he cannot explain the origin of the money and why they are in his room, he may face serious charges. When the time comes, as long as the other party proposes a deal, he will definitely not be able to escape the palm of those people's hands, and he can only do what they ask, unless he wants to sit in the prison. He nodded non-committal. After the wooden box was filled with 5,000 yuan coins, he pushed the car into the interior and said, "Hello, I'll go to the toilet. You guys wait for me for a while." 5,000 coins are very heavy, 5-cent coins are the lightest, 3.7 grams, 50-cent coins are the heaviest, there are 6.1 grams, plus 10 and 25 cents, the average is calculated the weight of each coin is more than 4 grams on average. 5,000 yuan, 130 pounds, Each newsboy's bag puts more than 20 pounds of coins. No wonder their faces are redder than usual. Just going to the second floor can make them feel obvious. Strenuous. After entering the inner room, Lynch did not rush out. He dragged the suitcase full of money into the bathroom, and found a pair of sturdy pants from the clothes that had just been washed in the cart. Tighten the trouser legs on both sides, hold a lot of coins and stuff them into the trouser legs, and when the box is lighter, hold it and pour it in. 2 trouser tubes were filled with coins. He tied his waist with a belt, pushed the 2 trouser legs apart into a stick-like shape, and stuffed them along the leak of the crude toilet in the bathroom. When this kind of old building was built by people, there were no humanized elbow designs. Not to mention elbow pipes, even parallel pipes will cause the feces upstairs to flow back directly, so its drainage design is a straight main pipe, and then each floor has a downwardly inclined pipe directly connected to the main pipe. There is a one-way plate where the main pipe connects to the septic tank. The advantage of this design is that there will be no backflow phenomenon. Residents living on the ground floor do not need to watch the toilet spraying manure out of the toilet. The disadvantage is that sometimes the home will have a strange smell. If an exhaust fan is installed, there is no need to worry. He hangs a soap box on the belt head, a simple wooden box, which can ensure that the belt head will float on the dung water, and when it is taken out at night, it will not jump into the cesspool. Look for it little by little. He breathed a sigh of relief after a faint sinking sound and the sound of the wooden board rebounding against the pipe. Not long after, Lynch returned to the room with a few stacks of banknotes. Now these newsboys are already waiting a little impatiently. Their attention is completely concentrated in Lynch's hands, on the thick pile of banknotes. He sat on the edge of the bed, took a few newspapers in his hand, unfolded the bills with rubber bands, and handed them to different children. You count them first, and then I will count them again. This is his rule, and people are willing to do the same. This way of counting both parties has established an important channel of trust for Lynch and these traders. The children were unhappy. When the first child finished counting the stack of $10 bills in his hand, he passed the money to Lynch while he said the number he had counted. Lynch counted one side in front of him, then put it directly into the newspaper, wrapped it in a newspaper, then took out a rubber band from his pocket, tied the newspaper and gave it to the kid. This is what he has been doing all the time. To use his original statement, that is, the most inconspicuous things in the leather bags of the newsboys are things related to the newspaper, which can prevent them from being targeted by some people. This statement has also been recognized by the newsboys. From then on, as long as the money exceeds 50 yuan, Lynch will hand it to them in a newspaper bag. It has become a habit they have adapted to now. www.mtlnovel.com. After counting the sums of money, it was wrapped in newspaper and tied with rubber bands. Lynch immediately returned to the inner room after sending the children away, and took out a lot of banknotes from several pockets of his body. He played a little trick, deducting a lot of money that was supposed to be given to the children. This is actually a very simple trick. When counting money, use the ring finger to pick up a part of the banknotes and bypass the middle finger, and then at the moment when the money is counted, the retracts and the palm of the hand is held down, and that part of the money will be kept in the palm of your hand. At this time, the children who had counted the money focused their attention on the wad of money that Lynch had placed in the newspaper, so that Lynch could easily put the hand that held part of the money back into his pocket. Need to take a rubber band. Then the money counted by the newsboy and Lynch at the same time will be wrapped in newspapers and tied with rubber bands under the gaze of the two. The whole process from Lynch's hands until the money is out of people's sight, probably in less than 2 seconds. Plus these kids are relatively young, and Lynch is older. They don't dare to offend Lynch's majesty and will not propose the idea of counting again. Lynch smoothly took the money back. If they had the courage to resist, they would not be just a newsboy now. About 2,000 to 3,000 yuan, he didn't count, since the other party wanted to frame him with this method, then he can't be blamed for finding some compensation first. Not long after he had done everything and hid the money, the door of the room was suddenly kicked open.